You won't believe what happens when a simple act of kindness turns into the ultimate betrayal. She saved him when no one else would, but the truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Get ready for a story of love, betrayal, and redemption that will leave you speechless. Bahia village was a place that looked like it came from a dream. The trees stood tall with green leaves that danced in the wind, and the smell of fresh mangoes filled the air every morning. Children played and laughed, their voices echoing across the hills. In the heart of this peaceful village lived two step-siblings, Kantu and Naima. They were raised in the same house, a sturdy home built by their father, Baba Toleka, a respected man known for his beautiful wood carving. Naima was Baba Toleka's daughter from his first wife, who had passed away when she was just a baby. Kantu was the son of his second wife, Mama Deka, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. Even though they had different mothers, Kantu and Naima grew up like brother and sister. They ate from the same plate, walked to the river together, and shared everything, from food to secrets. Their bond was strong in the early days, simple and full of childhood joy. Naima had a heart of gold. She was always ready to help. She woke up early to sweep the compound, cooked meals without being asked, and even cared for the animals without complaint. She smiled often and spoke gently. The villagers adored her. Even strangers could feel her kindness just by looking at her. Kantu, though, was the complete opposite. He liked attention. He wanted things done his way. He didn't enjoy work and often escaped chores by hiding or making excuses. Still, Naima covered for him, never complaining to their father. When they were younger, they would sit by the riverside and skip stones. Kantu would try to outdo Naima, but she would always laugh and cheer for him even if she won. They would tell each other stories under the stars, giggling until they fell asleep. In those moments, nothing else mattered. Not who their mothers were, not who got more praise, not who would inherit what. It was just them, two children who shared one father and one home. But as they grew older, something began to change. Kantu started noticing how much their father praised Naima. He saw how the villagers loved her and how people always spoke highly of her kindness. A little voice in his head started whispering dark thoughts, and Mama Deka, his mother, was not helping. She would sit with him at night and say things like, "You're the only son. One day, everything should be yours. But that girl, she's stealing your place." Still, in those early days, before jealousy took root, Kantu and Naima shared something pure, something real, a bond many would envy. If only it had lasted. If only Kantu had remembered those quiet nights under the stars, where his sister smiled at him like he was her whole world. But sometimes, even in the most peaceful villages, darkness finds a way in, and Bahia was no exception. As time flowed, like the gentle river through Bahia village, Naima blossomed into a graceful young woman. Her kindness, once known only within the walls of her home, began to spread like wildfire throughout the village. People would say, "Naima's heart is softer than morning dew," and elders often blessed her wherever she went. Even strangers noticed her gentle spirit and respectful ways. Her beauty was not loud or flashy. It was the quiet, natural kind that made people feel calm in her presence. Men from near and far began visiting Baba Toleka's home, bearing gifts of yams, cloth, and goats, hoping to win her heart. But Naima, humble as ever, smiled and thanked them, gently turning down their offers. She said she was not ready for marriage yet. She wanted to focus on helping her father and serving the household. Kantu watched all this in silence, but inside him, something dark began to grow. The same villagers who once called him the future of the family now whispered about his laziness. He would lie in the shade while Naima fetched water or pretend to be sick when it was time to help in the fields. He bragged, showed off, and often spent hours doing nothing. Slowly, people stopped praising him. Their attention shifted to Naima, and that made something burn in his chest. At first, it was just a flicker, but day by day that flicker turned into fire. At night, Mama Deka would sit beside her son, feeding the flames. "Your father is blind, Kantu," she whispered. "He gives all his love to a girl who isn't even my blood. Can't you see? Everything he has, his land, his business, his blessings, he plans to give to her." Kantu's jaw would tighten, his fists would clench. "But I'm his only son," he would say. "Then act like it," Mama Deka would snap. "Before it's too late." Those words echoed in his mind day and night. He began to see Naima not as his sister, but as an enemy. Her smile started to annoy him. Her kindness made him feel small. Even her silence, once comforting, now felt like a mockery. And while Naima still treated him like a brother, sharing food, covering for him, even defending him when villagers complained, Kantu's heart was already turning to stone. He stopped laughing with her, stopped walking to the river together. His eyes, once full of childhood playfulness, now watched her with suspicion and coldness. But he didn't act openly. No, Kantu was careful, quiet. His envy grew like a shadow, slow, creeping, unnoticed. He started planning something, not with loud words or angry fights, but with silence, smiles and lies. And all the while, Naima remained unaware. She still believed they were siblings who shared one home, one father, and one love. But Kantu had already chosen a different path, one that would change their lives forever. It was just after sunset, when the sky in Bahia village turned soft shades of orange and purple, that Naima walked quietly into their father's room to place some folded clothes on his bed. She wasn't expecting anyone to be there, but what she saw stopped her in her tracks. Kantu, her stepbrother, was crouched by their father's old wooden chest, his hands trembling as he scooped a few coins into his pocket. His eyes widened when he noticed her, frozen like a child caught stealing honey. But Naima didn't shout. She didn't run to call Baba Toleka. She didn't even ask why. Instead, she stepped closer and gently touched his arm. Her voice was calm, soft like the wind that whispered through their mango trees. "If you need something, ask me," she said. "You don't have to do this, Kantu." Her words weren't meant to shame him. They came from a place of deep love and care, a sister's heart that still believed in the boy she used to share roasted maize with. In that moment, Naima thought she was helping him. She thought maybe, just maybe, he would see that someone still believed in him, that someone still cared. But instead of melting, Kantu's heart hardened. Her kindness felt like poison. Her calm voice felt like thunder in his ears. He didn't see a sister trying to help. He saw a girl looking down on him, offering pity he didn't ask for. "I don't need your pity," he hissed, yanking his arm away like her touch burned him. Naima looked at him, not with anger, but with sadness. She didn't say another word. She quietly turned and walked away, leaving him in that room with a pocket full of stolen coins and a storm raging in his chest. From that day forward, something changed between them. Kantu grew colder, his eyes sharper. He avoided her, yet watched her more than ever. Every kind act from her felt like a slap. Every smile felt like a reminder of what he could never be. And Naima? She carried his secret like a stone in her heart, heavy, silent. She didn't tell Baba Toleka. She didn't even mention it to her closest friend in the village. She just kept going, doing her chores, helping others, and treating Kantu like nothing had happened. But inside, she was hurting, not because of the stolen coins, but because the boy who once laughed beside her under the stars now looked at her like she was the enemy. She hoped he would change. She prayed that her silence would plant a seed in his heart. But she didn't know that Kantu was already building walls around his soul, brick by bitter brick. And soon, even her golden heart wouldn't be enough to save him from himself. The night was eerily quiet in Bahia village. A new moon hung in the sky, leaving everything in darkness, as if the stars themselves had turned away. Kantu waited for this moment. It was the perfect night to carry out what he had been planning in silence for weeks. The anger in his heart had grown too heavy to carry. All he could see was Naima. Naima loved by all. Naima trusted, praised, honored, and him, always in her shadow. That night, he told himself it was time to take everything away from her. Baba Toleka had spent a full year carving a sacred sculpture, a tall, elegant piece of wood shaped like the lion spirit of their ancestors. It was to be presented to the chief during the coronation, a gift so special it was kept wrapped in white cloth and locked in a carved chest. The sculpture wasn't just art, it was pride, it was legacy. Kantu crept into their father's workroom and opened the chest with hands that shook from more than just nerves. He unwrapped the sculpture, stared at it for a long moment, then lifted it high and let it fall. The sharp snap of the wood breaking echoed like a scream. He quickly gathered the shattered pieces and tiptoed back into the house. With careful fingers, he lifted Naima's sleeping mat and hid the broken sculpture underneath it. Then he returned to bed, his heart thumping like a drum. He told himself she deserved it. By morning, panic spread through the household. Baba Toleka discovered the empty chest and cried out so loudly the neighbors came running. A search began immediately. The whole village joined in, for the sculpture was not just a family treasure. It belonged to the entire community. When the broken pieces were found beneath Naima's mat, there was a heavy silence. No one wanted to believe it, but there it was. The proof. The chief's guards dragged her out into the village square. People shouted, women wept, children pointed. Her name was on every tongue, but not with praise this time, with anger, with shame. Naima, barefoot and trembling, cried out, "I didn't do it! I swear on Mama's grave!" Her voice cracked. Her eyes searched the crowd, for her father, for anyone, for Kantu. But Baba Toleka had fallen to his knees. His eyes were wide with shock, his face drained of colour. His spirit seemed to leave him that very moment. And Kantu, he stood behind the crowd, silent. He didn't speak a word, he just watched. That silence broke Naima's heart more than the shouts. She had loved him like a real brother. And now, in her moment of need, he was a stone. The chief declared her banished. Her things were thrown out, her name smeared. The same villagers who once praised her now turned their backs as she walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back and tears in her eyes. Bahia had closed its heart to her, and it was all because of the one person she had protected the most. After Naima's exile, Kantu thought his life would finally begin. He walked with pride around the compound, expecting his father to hand him everything. Naima's chores, Naima's room, even Naima's respect. But things didn't go the way he imagined. Baba Toleka barely spoke. He sat for hours outside the house, staring at the horizon with eyes full of sorrow. The man who once carved joy into wood now held only grief in his hands. Within a few short weeks, Baba Toleka collapsed and never rose again. His heart, heavy with pain, gave up. Kantu stood beside the grave without shedding a tear. Inside, he felt something was slipping, but pride wouldn't let him admit it. He returned to the house and claimed it as his. He believed the village would honor him now. Instead, the people of Bahia began to whisper. "Since Naima left, nothing has been right," they said. "And why did Toleka die so suddenly?" Questions hung in the air like smoke. But Kantu ignored the signs. He sold his father's tools, the very ones that had built their legacy. He spent the money on fine clothes and unnecessary things. He mistreated the workers who once respected his father, shouting at them, calling them useless. Many of them left. The family's reputation, once clean like river water, now became muddy. It didn't take long before hunger knocked at the door. The goats grew thin, the fields were dry, and the house began to crack. Still, Kantu walked like a king in a crumbling castle. He would not see the ruin until it was too late. Then came the final blow. The chief of Bahia, hearing of Kantu's foolishness and cruelty, sent for him. The meeting was short. "You have dishonored your father, your people, and your name," the chief declared. "From this day forward, you are no longer welcome in Bahia." Kantu tried to protest, but his words held no weight. The villagers watched as he was stripped of all rights and cast out, just like Naima had been. But unlike Naima, no one wept for him. No one begged for mercy. He wandered from village to village, wearing clothes now torn and dirty. People turned away when he begged for food. He slept under trees, drank from puddles, and stared at the stars that once shone above him so proudly. Regret clung to him like a shadow, and every night, when the wind howled through the trees, it sounded like Naima's voice, soft, forgiving, and far, far away. Naima wandered for days, her feet bruised and her heart broken. She had nothing but the clothes on her back, and a name soaked in shame. But still, she walked. Her spirit, though wounded, refused to give up. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, she arrived in a quiet place called Zorami village. Tired and hungry, she collapsed near a small hut. That hut belonged to Mama Indari, an old healer with eyes sharp as a hawk, but a heart soft as warm bread. Mama Indari took one look at Naima and knew the girl had been through pain. Without asking questions, she gave her food, water, and a place to sleep. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Naima began to open up. She didn't tell Mama Indari the full story at first, but the healer never pushed. Instead, she showed her how to grind herbs, soothe fevers, and treat wounds. Naima, always eager to learn, picked up everything quickly. She watched, listened, and practiced. Her hands, once used to carry water and feed goats, now healed the sick and comforted crying children. People from neighboring huts came to Mama Indari's home, but soon they were asking specifically for Naima. There was something about her, her smile, her calm voice, her ability to make people feel safe. They began to call her Naima the Light, because wherever she went, she brought hope. She started teaching children how to read and write under the big baobab tree. The children adored her. She sang with them, danced with them, and listened to their stories like they were treasures. Even though Naima had found peace, she never forgot Bahaya. Sometimes, when the stars were bright, she would whisper to the wind, "Baba, I miss you." But she didn't let the pain stop her. Instead, it pushed her to grow. She built a small school, helped Mama Indari with the healing work, and began training other young girls who had nowhere to go. Over time, her name spread beyond Zorami. Traders spoke of her in markets. Travelers told stories of the kind girl with healing hands and a shining spirit. Her name reached far places, even kingdoms she had never heard of. Chiefs sent letters asking for her wisdom. Queens wanted her herbs. She had become more than the girl who was once shamed. She had become a symbol of strength, kindness, and light. Naima had risen from the ashes. She had turned pain into purpose. And though she never chased power or revenge, her quiet strength began to echo louder than any lie ever told about her. The afternoon sun was sinking behind the trees when a group of villagers came rushing into the village square, their voices filled with urgency. They had found a man at the edge of the forest, bruised, bleeding, barely breathing. Bandits had attacked him, robbed him, and left him for dead. The villagers, kind as always, carried him to the healer's hut. "Naima," they called, "we need you." She arrived calmly, her bag of herbs and bandages over her shoulder. As she stepped into the hut and looked at the man lying there, her breath caught. Time stood still. The face was thinner, the skin dirtier, and the pride gone. But she knew that face. It was Cantu. For a moment, everything around her disappeared. The herbs, the villagers, the sound of the wind. All she could hear was the echo of her own past, the shame, the exile, the betrayal. The same boy who had destroyed her life now lay helpless in front of her, unaware that the healer who had come to save him was the stepsister he had once ruined. He didn't recognize her. His eyes were weak, his lips were dry. "Water," he whispered. The villagers turned to Naima. "Please save him," they said. "He has no one." He was found alone, like a dying dog. Naima's fingers tightened around her satchel. She could walk away. She had every reason to. No one here knew her story. No one would judge her. But instead she took a deep breath, moved forward, and knelt beside him. She touched his forehead gently. "You're safe now," she whispered. Her voice didn't tremble. Her hands didn't shake. She began cleaning his wounds, giving him sips of herbal broth, placing healing leaves over his bruises. For days she cared for him, silent, focused. And still, Cantu didn't recognize her. He would sometimes open his eyes, see her shadow by the fire and mumble, "You're kind, like someone I once knew." Naima would only smile softly and continue her work. Each time she touched his wounds, she wasn't just healing his body, she was healing the pain he had left in her heart. The villagers marveled at her kindness. "Naima's heart is too big," they said. "Even the lost are found in her care." But deep inside, Naima carried the weight of what he had done like a quiet stone in her chest. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't scream the truth. She simply did what she always did. She gave love, even to the one who never deserved it. And still, Cantu had no idea the woman saving his life was the same sister he had once destroyed. Weeks passed, and the days blended together in a quiet routine. Naima continued to care for Cantu, her hands steady as she changed his bandages and prepared his meals. His wounds slowly healed, but the scars from their past, his betrayal and her exile, still lingered in the air, unspoken, unresolved. Cantu's strength returned with time. His fever broke, and he started to sit up, then stand, and eventually he was able to walk around the hut. But Naima didn't expect a thank you, nor did she want one. She gave because it was who she was, not because she needed recognition. Then one morning, as the golden light of dawn filtered through the trees, Cantu opened his eyes. For the first time, he truly looked at her. His breath hitched in his throat, and his face went pale. "Naima?" he whispered, the name barely escaping his trembling lips. The moment froze. Naima's heart beat a little faster, but her expression didn't change. She had known this moment would come. She had known he would finally recognize her, but she had no idea how he would react. She looked at him calmly, the weight of the past heavy but not overwhelming. "I am the girl you betrayed," she said softly, her voice steady. For a long, painful moment, Cantu stared at her. his eyes wide with disbelief. He looked like he had seen a ghost. The girl he had ruined, the sister he had abandoned, was sitting in front of him, alive and whole. He had expected to die alone, forgotten. Instead, she was here, healing him, showing him mercy. Suddenly he collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I destroyed your life, and you saved mine." His voice cracked with guilt and sorrow. Naima watched him, her heart heavy. She had every right to turn away, to walk out and leave him to face the consequences of his actions. He had betrayed her. He had stolen her future, her family's honor, and her place in Bahia. She could have left him to suffer, to wander the earth with nothing but regret. But as she stood there, looking down at Kantu, a strange calmness settled in her. She had already forgiven him, long before he had even asked for it. She had let go of the anger, the pain, and the resentment, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. Naima took a deep breath, and instead of turning away, she knelt beside him. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting," she said quietly. "It's about healing." Kantu sobbed harder, his body shaking with remorse. But Naima stayed by his side. She didn't leave him. She didn't run from the pain he had caused her. She stayed because in that moment she realized that healing wasn't just for him, it was for both of them. The villagers of Zorami gathered in a tense circle, their eyes fixed on the man who had caused so much pain, the man who had betrayed Naima. Whispers filled the air as they demanded to know who Kantu was and why he had been brought to their village. Anger and confusion bubbled beneath the surface, and the villagers were ready to seek justice, to demand an explanation for the man who had hurt Naima so deeply. Naima stood tall, her heart steady despite the storm of emotions around her. She'd already forgiven Kantu, but now she needed to make them understand. She stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "He is my brother," she said simply, her eyes never leaving the faces of the villagers. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "But he wronged you!" they cried in unison, voices raised in disbelief. They couldn't understand. They couldn't fathom why Naima, the girl who had been betrayed and cast out, would call the man who had ruined her life her brother. Naima looked at them, her gaze unwavering. She could see the hurt in their eyes, the anger, the confusion. She could feel the weight of the villagers' judgment pressing down on her, but she knew what she had to say next. "Yes, and I carry the scars," she admitted, her voice softening. "But we don't heal by revenge. We heal by showing a better way." There was silence. The villagers looked at each other, unsure of how to respond. Kantu, standing in the back, began to weep uncontrollably. The weight of his guilt, of the life he had destroyed, was too much to bear. His sobs echoed through the air, raw and filled with regret. He had never expected Naima to forgive him, let alone defend him in front of the very people he had wronged. That day, something changed in Kantu. His arrogance, his pride, and his bitterness crumbled. He had always thought that he was entitled to everything, that he was better than the people around him. But now, as he watched Naima, the girl he had betrayed, standing strong and forgiving him, he realized just how wrong he had been. Kantu made a vow that day, one that would change the course of his life forever. He vowed to become a better man, to make amends for the pain he had caused, and he kept that promise. He began working in the fields, side by side with the villagers he had once looked down on. He learned their ways, their hard work, and their humility. It was not easy, but he never gave up. Slowly, the villagers began to see the change in him. Kantu wasn't the same man who had betrayed his sister, the man who had sought only power and wealth. Now, he was the man who had learned the true meaning of humility, the man who had learned to work for his place in the world, just like everyone else. And in the heart of Zorami, Naima watched with quiet pride as the brother she had once lost began to rebuild himself. Months passed, and the winds of change swept through the land. News of Naima's transformation reached Bahia village, and whispers spread from one village to the next. The girl who had once been cast out, whose name had been smeared, and whose spirit had been broken, was now something entirely different. She was no longer the girl who had suffered. She was now a healer, a leader, and a beacon of hope for all who knew her. Her story had traveled far, reaching the ears of those who had once doubted her. The chief of Bahia, hearing of her rise, decided to make the journey to Zorami himself. He knew he had to see the woman who had become a legend in her own right. When he arrived, he was greeted by the village, their faces filled with admiration and respect for Naima. Her humble hut had transformed into a place of reverence, where people came from all over to seek her guidance, her healing, and her wisdom. The chief, deeply moved by her grace and the way she had risen above the pain of her past, declared Naima the daughter of the sun. Her crown was not made of gold, but of flowers and leaves, symbols of her growth, her resilience, and the light she now carried in her heart. She had become a living legend, a woman who had overcome betrayal and hardship, and had turned that darkness into something that illuminated the world around her. Meanwhile, Cantu stayed out of the spotlight. His name no longer echoed with the arrogance it once held. He had been stripped of his former glory and was now working tirelessly to rebuild his life, not through wealth or fame, but through honesty and hard work. He was no longer the man who had betrayed his sister. He had become a quiet figure, humbling himself day by day. His redemption was not easy, and it was not for the world to see. He worked in the shadows, slowly healing his broken soul. But the story of Naima and Cantu lived on. It echoed across villages, whispered by those who had witnessed it, and shared by those who believed in the power of forgiveness. It was a tale of betrayal, of pain that could have torn them apart, but also of forgiveness, a gift that had healed them both in ways they could never have imagined. And above all, it was a story of redemption, the kind that only comes when you are willing to face your mistakes and change your path. The message was clear. Sometimes, the one you hurt the most is the only one who will still choose to save you. In Naima, Cantu had found not just a sister, but a savior. She had shown him that true strength lies not in vengeance, but in the courage to forgive. And so, Naima's story became a living testament to the truth that forgiveness does not erase the past, but it can light the future. This story is a powerful reminder that no matter how deep the wounds of betrayal may run, there is always a chance for healing and redemption. Naima's strength, her ability to forgive when the world would have understood if she didn't, teaches us all that love, compassion, and the willingness to rise above pain can change lives. Cantu's journey from arrogance to humility, from betrayal to redemption, shows us that no one is beyond forgiveness. It's never too late to choose a better path, to rebuild what was broken, and to make amends for the wrongs we've done. If you've been touched by Naima and Cantu's story, if it has made you think about the power of forgiveness and second chances, we ask you to share this message with the world. Like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, heal, and uplift. Your support means everything to us. Thank you for watching and for believing in the power of love, forgiveness, and change. Together, we can create a world where redemption is possible for everyone. Stay tuned for more heartwarming stories, and don't forget to spread the light.